Quick disclaimer before this video starts, unfortunately, I will not have a face cam because I recorded this video at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Thought I had my face cam on, I didn't, and because of scheduling and deadlines and things of that nature, I unfortunately cannot sit down to re-record this video, so I don't know if it's a huge deal to any of you out there, but this video will not have a face cam. But anyways, still normal draft grade video, nothing else has changed, so I hope you enjoy. Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David, I also go by MillerFootball, and I am currently doing a series here on this channel that I have been releasing somewhat sporadically throughout the summer, where I'm going division by division, team by team, and pick by pick to hand out my grades for the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, I do have to throw a couple quick disclaimers out here before we dive into this. Number one, I'm not an NFL scout, I'm not an NFL GM, I'm not affiliated with an NFL team in any way, shape, or form, if we're being totally honest. I'm just a 20-year-old college kid with way too much free time that spent a lot of that during the spring watching tape. So I feel like I'm pretty qualified to talk about these players. I've watched a lot of them. I know what they're about. And people seem to like my opinions when I share them here on the internet, so I figured why not just go ahead and talk about all 8 divisions, go ahead and do that. So if I say that, DeMarco Hellams was the worst pick of all time, maybe don't take that too much to heart. I could absolutely be wrong, and he could be first ballot Hall of Famer, greatest player of all time type of thing, or whatever, right? So I could be wrong, I could be right. If you want to come back in 3 years when somebody's a Pro Bowler and I said they were a bust and take a victory lap, by all means, go ahead. But with all that out of the way, if it's not apparent, we're going to be talking about the NFC South today, pretty in line with my team preview series that I've been doing, trying to crank these out before I get to that division when I talk about them in that series. Which, by the way, if you're not watching, definitely would recommend doing so. It's a fantastic series that I'm doing where I'm talking about all 32 NFL teams in depth with guests for each video, bringing on fans of different teams. It's a ton of fun, talking to a lot of cool people. I've covered a lot of teams. By the time this goes out, the Atlanta Falcons will probably be the next team preview I drop. So if you're a fan of them, you're a fan of any other team, I would definitely recommend checking it out. But like I said, with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into this, starting out with the Atlanta Falcons. All right, so starting things off with the Atlanta Falcons, I really like what they did. I'm going to tell you right now off the bat, we are starting with my favorite draft that this division has to offer. And a big reason for that is their first pick, being Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. And I know at face value, running back, top 10 pick, not great, but just hear me out, right? It's no secret that Bijan Robinson is a fantastic football player. He's probably the best running back prospect we have seen since Saquon Barkley, who was also a top 10 pick, actually went a little bit higher than Bijan. And I know the Falcons had a very productive running back in Tyler Algier last year, and I mean no disrespect to him, but Bijan is better at literally everything. And for a team that really liked to run the ball last year, is really committed to using the run to set up the passing game, makes a lot of sense. And not only that, but Bijan is the type of running back that, similar to like a Christian McCaffrey, can split out wide and play receiver, go out and run routes, things like that. So I really like this pick. Just kind of looking at Bijan as a player on my draft board, he was RB1 for me, if it's not apparent. Best running back in this class, in my opinion. In fact, I thought he was one of the 10 best players in the class, period. And overall, he's just the nearly perfect running back. He's a really good blocker, both as a pass blocker and as a run blocker, if you find yourself in the position you need him to run block. He has fantastic footwork. Like I already said, he can kind of be like Christian McCaffrey as a receiver, where you can line him up out wide. He's going to run legitimate routes. He has a really good route tree for a halfback, and can create actual separation against, corners and safeties and linebackers and things like that. He's a really good mismatch out there. But not only that, he can run through people. He has fantastic vision. He breaks tackles at a pretty good clip. His contact balance is really impressive. He's got a good spin move, a good stutter step that he likes to employ to fake out defenders. He's a really smart football player, has a really high football IQ, and he's just someone that can overall consistently make guys miss. And if he's not making them miss, he can run through them. That being said, I do have some issues with his patience. He's not the most patient back in the world, which, isn't ideal, but can definitely be worked on, can definitely be fixed, can definitely be coached on. And with Atlanta's offensive staff, I have no doubt in my mind that they can kind of get that to work with him. And he doesn't have that elite speed. He's not somebody that's going to go out there like CJ2K, like Chris Johnson, and completely torch a defense But he doesn't need to. That's not his game. He does literally everything else you need a running back to do. So if he's not super fast, he's not super fast. You can live with it. You can be okay with it. So I love the pick for the Falcons. I think he's going to be a major contributor on offense, not only in the run game, but also in the pass game. So I'm going to give this an A. It's a pretty easy A for me. And moving right along into the second round, the second pick was offensive lineman Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse. I say offensive lineman because he played tackle in college, and as you can see on the screen, or as you probably could see on the screen before I started highlights if we're playing any, he is listed as a guard for the Falcons right now, and that works beautifully. I really like that for the Falcons offense. He's somebody that's got a lot of toughness, kind of a mean streak to him, and that's something they really needed at guard. Looking at him as a tackle, he was OT6 for me, had a second round grade on him. So here at the top of the second round, it makes a lot of sense. Just has a lot of the things you want as a guard. He's versatile, he's smooth, he's got a strong, flexible core, a lot of power at the point of attack. He's flexible, he's got range, he can get out and move. The only issues I have with him are his strength. Like, he doesn't have elite strength. He has good strength, but not elite strength. And that isn't as big of a deal when you're a guard. If it was a tackle, I'd be much more concerned about it. And his hand usage could use some work, but I like the staff they have in Atlanta, again, to develop offensive linemen. We've seen what they've been able to do with guys like Chris Lindstrom, who's arguably the best guard in football right now. So I like this pick a lot. He's a fantastic run blocker, so he's really going to help them set up that run game. Overall, again, going to give this one A. I thought this was a great pick. And spoiler alert, they've got the hat trick. They're going 3 for 3 with A's. Next pick being Zach Harrison out of Ohio State, the edge rusher. One of my favorite players in this entire class. He was a top 10 edge rusher for me, which is a big deal because this is a pretty deep edge class. I had him as edge 9. True second round grade on him, so you're getting him in the third round. That's pretty good. He's a good complement to Arnold Ebiketie because Ebiketie is more of that finesse rusher, really relies on his speed, his agility, things like that. Zach Harrison's the total opposite. He wants to run through you at all costs. And that works really well because he's got a massive frame. He has these super long arms that he can use to just manhandle people. He's a pretty good athlete, not to say that he's not athletic, right? He can still move a little bit. He's got good short area quickness. He times the snap really well, which is great, which also gives him a great first step. He can win inside, he can win outside, he can do a little bit of everything. As a run defender, he's got really good eye discipline. He's got good balance. It takes a lot to knock him off balance. His hands are really active and pack a lot of punch. He has flashes of being able to bend a little bit. Maybe you can do something with that, maybe you can't. He's got a really good bull rush. He can run through guys no problem whatsoever. My issues with him are he's kind of stiff as a mover, especially when it comes to like lateral movement. Like when I did my pre-draft comparisons, I didn't compare players to NFL players. I compared them to fictional characters, and this is the first time I'm bringing this up in this series. But I thought that was a lot more fun, and my comp for Zach Harrison was the Iron Giant, because he's big, he's long, he's hulking, he's powerful. It's just he's not the most nimble person in the world, right? And he also, because he's a bigger dude, he doesn't have that like built-in leverage, so his leverage needs a little bit of work. But overall, as like a power rusher, as somebody you're just going to say, hey, go fuck up the quarterback, I love the pick. Like I said, I'm going to give this an A. And then we go into the fourth round with defensive back Clark Phillips III out of Utah. Specifically, he's a corner. Another top 10 player at their position for me. He was CB8, had a late second, early third round grade on him, so this is pretty good value. He's a guy that, looking at the draft, or looking at the tape, he had everything you want, right? The reason he fell is because of stuff outside of the football field or off the field. And that's, he didn't test very well, which obviously hurts. And he's not the biggest guy in the world. Like, he's not going to be a boundary corner, but as a nickel corner, I was really surprised he lasted this long. So looking at what Clark Phillips brings to the table, he's got quick feet, he's got fluid hips, he's got pretty good ball skills. I like what he brings to the table there. He's tough, he's instinctive, he's very aggressive. Overall, as an athlete, he's pretty damn good. High football IQ, super smart kid. Good reaction time. As soon as he sees the ball, he locks onto it, and he warps to it almost. But like I said, he's a little small, not the fastest guy in the world. And honestly, as a tackler, he could use a little bit of work. But as a corner, kind of hit or miss there. I would imagine he can develop a little bit there. You're going to want him to develop a little bit there if you're going to play him in the nickel. But overall, based off of value and based off of what I saw on tape at Utah, another A. This is another really good pick. And then we jump down to the 7th round, and I'm going to be honest, I don't like these guys quite as much as the first 4 picks. Still pretty solid. Starting out with DeMarco Hellams from Alabama. He was safety 15 for me, had a round 6 grade on him, so you're getting some good value here. And looking at Hellams, the truth is he's just a straight up box safety. Like, if you play him deep, you're cooked. He's not going to give you anything if you try to play him as one of your 2 deep safeties. But if you bring him up in the box, he can play pretty well there. He's very instinctive. He triggers to the ball pretty quickly. He's super physical. He's really good as a tackler. I really like what he brings to the table in terms of his technique, the way he approaches tackling, how hard he hits people. All that stuff is really nice. He's able to make plays when he's in the box. So like I said, if you're playing him in the box, he's going to be a good player. However, if you try to play him deep, he's a straight up liability. He just doesn't have the athleticism to hang as a deep third safety. So if you try to put him back there, he's going to get torched. Like, a fast receiver is going to run right by him. He's not going to provide you much support. He's not the best in man coverage because of this athletic limitation. And he also bites a little hard on play fakes. Like, he's a super aggressive player, so he is always trying to get the ball. And to a certain extent, that's great. In moderation, that's great. But when it's every play and you're biting on a lot of play fakes, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. And there were quite a few instances of that at Alabama. But I think if developed correctly, he can be a damn good box safety. So considering it's the 7th round, you're getting a guy that I think his floor is pretty solid. I'm going to give it a B+. Not quite an A, but still a very, very good pick. And finally, in the 7th round, with the very next pick, you took guard Jovan Gwynn out of South Carolina. I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch this guy before the draft. This is the only guy in this class I did not watch before the draft. But I did go back, watched a little bit after the draft, and from what I can put together, this is probably about where I would have taken him. And truth be told, he's just another scheme fit guard. He doesn't have anything that like jumps off the page at you. He's going to be a good depth piece, but he played in a similar system. He can move well enough. He's aggressive enough. He's tough enough. All that good stuff to be a good depth guard. So not a lot to say here. Just a solid pick. Again, going to give this one a B+. And as a whole, like I said, this is my favorite draft from the NFC South, excuse me. So I'm going to give them an A. I think they did really, really well. I think they hit on their first 4 picks. I think all 4 players are going to develop into very important pieces of their team. Bijan Robinson, I think, could even contend for Rookie of the Year, might be the front runner for Rookie of the Year for a lot of people. We did on my podcast, or on the North podcast, which if you haven't already, you should definitely check out. We did dark horse picks for every award. And I actually picked Bijan as my dark horse for not offensive Rookie of the Year, but offensive player of the year, because I think he's that good. And this type of offense is going to allow him to be really productive. I think he's going to be a massive part of this offense. I think they're going to turn to him a lot. So I love that pick. I love everything they did. I think the Falcons did a really good job. And while it might not turn dividends right away, I think it will. I think the Falcons are going to be pretty solid. But even if it doesn't, you've got some guys that can absolutely make an impact in the future. Jumping over to the Carolina Panthers, this is a team that, as we all know, traded up to the first overall pick with my Chicago Bears. And I know there's been a lot of debate between Bears fans and Panthers fans on Twitter. But look, I think both teams win in this trade. The Bears get the elite receiver they needed. They got another top 10 pick that they used on an offensive tackle that I'm pretty high on. He was my OT1. They got a first-round pick next year. They got another second-round pick out of it. And the Panthers get, in my opinion, their franchise QB. I think Bryce Young's awesome. So I'm really happy for both teams here. I think both teams are winning. I'm not going to sit here and shit on the Panthers and say, oh, you're idiots for giving up DJ Moore or anything. I know a lot of Bears fans have done that. I'm not. I think this weird, quote-unquote, rivalry that's been formed between Bears fans and Panthers fans on Twitter is stupid. I think it's really dumb. I think both teams need to get their heads out of their asses and just acknowledge that 2 teams can win a trade. But anyways, Bryce Young, quarterback at Alabama. He was my QB1, top 5 player in the class. And the best way I can describe what he is, and this is going to sound weird, and this is going to sound like very high praise, and it is, but not to the degree that it's going to come off as. He's like if you put Patrick Mahomes in Drew Brees' body and took away his arm strength. Because, like, Young runs around like a bite-sized Mahomes, right? He's got a little bit of that athleticism, super creative, can make a lot of plays on the move, can do some, like, just ungodly things on the field. Some of the things he does, it doesn't look human. He's got that Mahomes quality, but obviously he's very small, and he doesn't have a super strong arm. And a lot of people want to compare him to Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, and I hate that because he's not like either of them. I especially hate that Kyler was used as a reason to say that Bryce Young is a bust, because spoiler alert, Bryce Young's not going to be a bust. Kyler Murray's not a bust either. He's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in football. But I love Bryce Young. I think he's going to be awesome in the NFL. Like I said, looking at what he brings to the table, super creative. He's got a great processor, possesses NFL-level anticipation. But I'm talking about his processor, by the way, pre and post-snap. Fantastic. Through his progressions really well. Footwork is great. Mechanics are great. Pocket presence is great. He's really good at evading and handling pressure. He's patient. He's got a quick release, gets that ball out real fast. He evades his sacks pretty well. He's really efficient in the red zone. One of the most efficient and prolific red zone passers I've seen in my lifetime, to be totally honest. It's just like I said, he's a little small. He's very small by quarterback standards. And his arm talent isn't elite. It's not bad. He can make a lot of throws. It's just he's not Mahomes. He's not Allen. He's not Kyler. He's not Justin Herbert. He's not one of these guys where every throw downfield is available to him. You know, he can make most of them. It's not all of them. So maybe it'll hold him back in very specific circumstances. But as a whole, you can make a damn good career out of not being able to hit all those throws. Brady couldn't hit all those throws. Drew Brees couldn't hit all those throws. Peyton Manning couldn't hit all those throws. Pretty much any quarterback other than the guys I named, and like prime Matt Stafford, Brett Favre, guys like that. A lot of guys couldn't make those throws. A lot of guys couldn't make those crazy, absurd throws. So it's not going to hurt him that bad. I think he will be, for the most part, pretty fine. With all that being said, love the pick for Carolina. I think it's great. Trade up, you get your franchise guy. I think he's going to be special. So I'm going to give this an A. I'm not giving an A+, because as I've said multiple times before, that is reserved for steals and steals only. And picking a guy first overall isn't quite a steal. It's a fantastic pick. As we jump over to the second round, 8th pick in the second round to be specific, the Carolina Panthers took wide receiver Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. And I'm not going to say he's your DJ Moore replacement, because nobody replaces DJ Moore, but he's going to be the next X receiver in Carolina. Let me explain. So I like Mingo a lot. He's wide receiver 8 for me. Had a late second to early third round grade on him. So full transparency, earlier than I would have taken him, but I can't be that mad, right? I love Mingo. He's strong. He's got really good footwork. He accelerates pretty well. Tracks the ball pretty well. He's got a big frame. Despite being a bigger body receiver, he's a pretty good route runner. He's good after the catch. Pretty hard to bring down. Good run blocker. It's kind of like a baby DK, right? Maybe that's just the Ole Miss connection where I'm getting that, but he does remind me a little bit of DK Metcalf. It's just he needs to work on separating downfield, which is obviously an issue, but I do think he can work through it. He wasn't super productive in college, but he went to Ole Miss, so happens. And then with his hands, they're not super consistent. There's a lot of flashes of greatness with his hands, right? But they are definitely not consistent. So that needs to be improved. And overall, I would say the pick is somewhat of a gamble because maybe there were more complete receivers on the board. That happens. But I love the pick. I think he's going to be great for Carolina. As I said, a little higher than I would have taken him, so I'm going to give them a B+. But just know this is a guy I'm super confident in. I like his fit in Carolina a lot, and I think him and Bryce Young are going to be one hell of a tandem. As we move into the third round, edge DJ Johnson out of Oregon. Don't like this pick. Don't like it one bit. Here's why, right? I watched 40 edge rushers before the draft. 40 of them. It's a position I watched the most at because my Chicago Bears really needed an edge rusher. And ironically, they turned around and didn't draft a single one. That's neither here nor there. I watched 40 of them. And out of those 40, there were 39 graded higher than DJ Johnson on my draft board, making him edge 40. The worst edge rusher I watched before the draft. I had an undrafted grade on him, and he went in the 3rd round. Now, this is one of two things. Either I'm a complete moron, and I clearly missed something that the Panthers didn't, or the Carolina Panthers here are really gambling on athletic upside on a 24-year-old that has no refinement whatsoever. Pick your poison with what you think the answer is, but I'm going to stick with my gut. And I'm going to say the Carolina Panthers just drafted a guy who, despite being pretty athletic, is 24. Took 5.5 years to start in college. He did not, or I'm sorry. Yeah. 5.5. He started midway through his 6th season. And just straight up can't do anything but bull rush. Looking at what he does good, right? He does have a good bull rush. Props to him. He's pretty athletic. He's got good length. And that's kind of where the positive stuff stops. Hips are really tight. Totally raw as a pass rusher. His pass rushing tool belt is non-existent outside of that bull rush. He can't tackle, especially can't tackle in open space, which is a big issue for an edge rusher. He has no instincts against the run. He has no idea what's going on. And counter moves, he's never heard of them. He doesn't know how to use them. So essentially you just said, hey, 3rd round, plenty good edge rushers on the board. Let's take the one that has no idea how to play edge, but it's kind of athletic. Now, I'm not going to give them enough for this because there is a little bit of upside there. I'm going to give him a big fat D-, because, oh goodness, I do not like this pick at all. Then you jump over to the 4th round, and I like this pick a lot. That's offensive lineman Chandler Zavala out of NC State. I'm going to try to keep this one quick because it's an offensive lineman. I don't want to bore you. But interior offensive lineman 11 for me. Had a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him, so about where I would have taken him, if not maybe a little later. The big thing here is he gets to reunite with his former teammate, Ike Ekwonu, who was fantastic last year. 2 of them ideally will start on the offensive line together. And Zavala, high football IQ kid, knows exactly what's going on, super smart, high character, great footwork, has a wide base, mirrors really well, and has the ideal frame for an interior offensive lineman. Now, I will say, he has some injury issues. You're hoping you can get him to stay healthy. He can be a tick late off the snap, nothing too crazy, but not ideal. And there are times where he lunges, but I do think with some good development, I think putting him back next to Ike Ekwonu, I think he can be really good. I really like this pick for Carolina. I'm going to give it an A. I really like the Zavala pick. And then their final pick, safety Jamie Robinson out of Florida State. He was safety 7 for me. Had a round 3 to a round 4 grade on him, so you get him in the 5th round. That's pretty solid. He's got a high motor. Pretty versatile. He played free safety, strong safety, a little bit of linebacker, and a little bit of nickel corner. He's instinctive, twitchy, pretty explosive. He's a really good tackler. Always love to see that from a DB. And he's somebody that's just a straight-up tone setter. He's going to come down, he's going to fly, he's going to hit somebody in the mouth, pop back up, and everybody's going to go fucking nuts. And you love that in a safety. You always want a guy like that on your defense, and Carolina got themselves one. He's just an overall fantastic downhill ball player. Now, I will say, didn't have great ball production in college. Doesn't have the length or the overall frame that you ideally want, but you can get around it. He's not good in man coverage. He's not the rangiest guy in the world, so coverage isn't necessarily a strong suit, but as a run defender and somebody who, like I said, is just going to be a tone setter for your defense, feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to give this pick an A-. I definitely like this pick a good bit. As a whole, despite only having 5 picks, and in my opinion, completely whiffing on one of them, I think the Carolina Panthers did pretty damn good. Wasn't for the DJ Johnson pick, this would be an easy A, maybe even an A+. But DJ Johnson, bad. So I'm going to give them an A-. I really like this class outside of DJ Johnson, and who knows? I'm ragging on him a lot. Maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe that athleticism goes somewhere. I don't know. But either way, Young, Mingo, and Zavala especially, I think, could be really damn good for them. And I love a tone-setting safety, so you can't go wrong with Jamie Robinson either. Moving on over to the New Orleans Saints. This is a draft class that, again, I thought was pretty damn solid. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this, starting out with the first pick they made, being pick 29, and that was Bryan Bresee out of Clemson. Now, I'm going to be honest, Clemson's defense last year was not great. I already gave my thoughts on Myles Murphy in my AFC North video, and I was not very high on him. I do not like Myles Murphy a lot. But Bryan Bresee I thought was pretty okay. He was IDL 5 for me. I had a second-round grade on him, so a bit higher than I would have taken him, but not enough for me to care that much. You look at him, he's a good athlete, pretty explosive, good first step, good eye discipline both against the pass and the run, good reaction time, very effective on stunts. If you want to stun him, this guy's a madman. And he's got a lot of power in his hands. So he's got the physical tools you want, right? However, he has a lot of injury issues, which is never ideal. He lacks a real plan when he's pass rushing. Like, he just kind of goes at it and says, fuck it, I'll beat my guy. And in college, that can work from time to time, but in the NFL, it's going to be a lot harder to get away with that. His pad level could definitely use some improvement. He could get a little lower. He doesn't have the best balance in the world. He's pretty iffy. He just needs a lot of polish, right? To me, Bryan Bresee is the definition of boom or bust. Now, I will say I am rooting like hell for this guy to be a boom prospect. I love Bryan Bresee. His story makes me cry when I think about it too much because, oh my God, this kid has been through everything. So I am rooting like hell for this guy to be an absolute superstar in the league, a Chris Jones level guy that gets an absurd contract when his 4 or 5 years are up. There's no guarantee that's going to happen, though. There's definitely a world where he doesn't pan out. Again, really hoping that doesn't happen, but there is a world. So I'm going to give this a B+. I like the pick. I like the upside. I think he can, again, be a superstar in this league if all goes well. And I think a big help for him on that defensive line is going to be having Isaiah Foskey on the team with him, the edge rusher out of Notre Dame. Top 10 player for me at his position, at edge. I had a second-round grade on him. This guy with a high motor, high football IQ, very disciplined eyes. I was talking about how disciplined Bryan Bresee's eyes are. Isaiah Foskey doesn't skip a beat, right? His eyes are always trained where exactly they need to be. Overall, as a whole, he's like a really good run defender. I really like what he brings against the run. He's got really good get-off, good closing speed. He's good at kind of picking up on and closing in on ball carriers. He's got a really good bull rush. He's got good size, good length, all that kind of good stuff. And he's got overall solid athletic traits. The problem with him, as with a lot of the edge rushers in this class, is his pass rush tool belt's pretty limited. It's not ideal. Something that can be developed for sure. And as a second-round pick, you're getting a floor of a guy who's a stellar run defender and just needs a little work rushing the passer, so you can get away with that. I'm okay with that. But his anchor needs a little bit of work, too. He can fix that, I would imagine. And his hand usage is a little inconsistent, but there's flashes of something beautiful there. That's just a talent and a skill he just needs to hone, right? So I like the Foskey pick a lot. I think he's going to be a really good edge rusher for the Saints, so I'm going to give it an A. I think it's good value. I think it's right about where he should have went, and I think it's a good fit. And then we jump into the third round with running back Kendre Miller, someone that the Saints are going to be leaning on early in the season with the recent news of Alvin Kamara's suspension. I promise you, that does not play into the draft grade at all, but I do like what Kendre Miller brings to the table. So he was RB8 for me, had a third to a fourth round grade on him, and I really like this running back class, so being in the top 10 for me is high praise. He's got really good vision. He's a patient runner. He's got good short area quickness and twitch, so he can kind of move around right when he gets the ball in his hands. Changes directions pretty well. He's pretty evasive. Solid overall speed. Not a burner, but he can hold his own. He's got a dense frame, really good contact balance, breaks a lot of arm tackles because of that dense frame. He's got a high football IQ. He's a smart kid, knows what's going on in the field. One of the biggest issues with him is his projection as a pass catcher, which, as we all know, for the Saints is pretty important out of their halfbacks, is a total projection. We have no idea what he brings to the table as a pass catcher. So we'll have to see there. He's got tight hips, which obviously isn't ideal. He's got a little bit of wiggle, but not too much. He runs a little upright. Just teach him to lower the shoulder, you'll be fine. Not a good pass blocker, which, you know, it is what it is. You got Adam Prentice. You got a good pass blocking fullback. You can get some use out of him, right? And he's just somebody that's not ideal as a power back. But as someone on early downs you want to use as a change of pace guy, good pick. Third round, that's about where you want to be taking running backs, especially with Alvin Kamara getting suspended. I think this is a good pick. Again, the suspension doesn't impact their grade. That being said, I still like to pick a good pick, so I'm going to give it a B+. I really like this pick here. And then Nick Saldiveri, I believe I said that right. I'm terrible with names. Saints fans, cover your ears. Good example of how bad I am with names is Chris Olave. When he was coming out in the draft, I shit you not, I called him Chris Olave for 3 or 4 months until my TikTok comments yelled at me. So I'm bad with names, right? But it's Nick Saldivieri, I don't know. Nick, right? I didn't watch him before the draft. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. But the little bit I did get to see, from what I know, he's a high character guy. Coaches really seem to like him. There's definitely upside there. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be the Nick Saldiveri expert. I think he's solid. I think he'll be good depth on the offensive line. So I'm going to give him a B-. Nothing crazy, but solid pick. And then we get to the other 4th round pick, quarterback Jake Haener out of Fresno State, who might be, if you're in the circles that I am, the most controversial quarterback in this class. That's because a certain individual, whom I will not name because he is an ass, called this kid QB1, and I don't agree with that by any stretch of the imagination. This is a fine backup, right? He's one of those guys that he was good in college. He has good college quarterback traits. That's why the guy I'm not talking about liked him so much. He's a college guy, doesn't care about the NFL. But this Haener kid, I didn't watch him before the draft. I had to get around to him after. But he's just somebody that, like I said, screams long-term backup QB, right? That is what he is. He's got a good processor, both pre and post snap. He makes good decisions. He can make plays under pressure. Looking at some of the negatives here, his release is pretty slow. There's not a lot of room for him to move in the pocket. He doesn't do that very well. His arm strength is pretty limited, even more so than Bryce Young's, which we were talking about earlier. And he's just somebody that I don't see ever starting in the NFL. So he's fine. Probably be QB3 on the depth chart. So I don't know. I'll give it a C+. Not blown away by it. Don't love the pick. It's fine. You could have done worse. Now shifting gears to safety Jordan Howden out of Minnesota. This is a guy I like a lot. Now this is a little early for me. I would have taken him more in the 6th round, graded out as the 14th highest rated safety for me. He's somebody that I like a lot because he was a walk-on true freshman and got better every year. And by the time he graduated, he was a team captain and something of a living legend at Minnesota, right? He's somebody with a ton of grit, super, super high character guy, great tackler. Love that in a safety. He's really good at bringing down ball carriers. He's got long arms, pretty good long speed. He's a pretty overall solid athlete. He's not perfect in coverage, but he does have a lot of flashes and is pretty steady. Like, he's not somebody that's going to get completely torched and completely embarrassed. He's just not a superstar there. He's got a lot of experience in college. You know, good instincts, good play recognition, pretty solid floor, high ceiling if you ask me. It's just, he's not the tallest safety in the world. Like, he's a little shorter, on the shorter side. He's not the greatest playmaker, and he lacked the production in college, but god damn it, I like this guy a lot. I love his story. Second guy on the Saints, and I'm a big fan of their story. And I want him to be a superstar. I like Jordan Howden a lot. I'm going to give him a B-, only because he was taken a little bit higher than I would have taken him. Still love the pick. Still love the player. And then we get to the 6th round, and we're going to completely shift gears because this was a big-time steal. And that's wide receiver A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest. Wide receiver 15 for me, had a round 4 grade on him. That seems low, but I actually kind of liked this receiver class. I know a lot of people didn't. I liked what some of these guys bring to the table. And A.T. Perry, got a tall frame, good overall length. He's got that ideal X receiver build. And that's great for the Saints because they don't have a guy that's like perfect X. Like, they've got Chris Olave. He can do it. He probably fits a little bit better as a Z. So if A.T. Perry works out and can let him move to the Z, that would be fantastic for them. But looking at A.T. Perry, he's fast, really good against physical coverage, good body control, good on 50-50 balls. He's pretty versatile overall. I like what he brings to the table a lot. Looking at his negatives, though, he's not a good blocker, which I know for a lot of people isn't the end-all, be-all, and it's not, but I like to bring it up because I care about wide receivers blocking. Sue me. I'm old school. I care about that shit. But other than that, he's not great at changing directions. His hands are a little inconsistent. He could use some coaching there. His release really isn't that good, and he's kind of a body catcher. So if you can kind of coach some of the kinks out, I do think A.T. Perry can make a pretty solid X. Again, I would have taken him a lot earlier than this, so I like the pick. I'm going to give it an A. And as a whole for the Saints, I like this draft. It's a pretty solid draft overall. No pick that's like egregiously bad or anything. So I'm going to give it a B+. I like what they bring to I like what this class brings to the table. And I think they did pretty solid. Jumping over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a team that probably doesn't have a ton to look forward to. I'm very sorry. At least this year. But I do like what they did in the draft. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Starting out with interior defensive lineman Kalijah Cansey out of Pitt, who I know is already hurt. I don't care. That's not going to count against his draft grade. I like Cansey a lot. He was the second highest rated interior defensive lineman for me, only behind Jalen Carter, of course. Was a top 10 player in the class. So if that gives you an idea of how much I like him a lot. He is the perfect pairing for Mr. Vita Vea, giving you the ideal 4-eye for this defense. They really needed one, and I think Kalijah Cansey can cook for them. No secret that he's an absurd athlete. That's really what catches your eye with him. He has an absurd ability to convert speed to power, absurd ability to get off the ball, like that first step is off the chain. He has a high motor, good lateral agility, very productive pass rusher in college, strong arms. He's got a developed pass rushing tool belt, which you love to see for the little guy. He's got a really effective push-pull move that he likes to use, and his spin and swim moves are also pretty effective. And despite his size, despite being a little smaller in stature, he packs a punch, especially with his bull rush. He shoots gaps pretty well, which is great because that means Vita Vea can just eat up the blockers and allow Kalijah to slip right by him. And he has a pretty solid anchor as a whole, again, despite being a little smaller. But like I said, he's undersized, not the longest guy in the world. His arm length is pretty short. And because he's so small, there are times where he's going to get bodied by bigger offensive linemen and kind of get lost in the run game. But it's okay, because he's got everything else. He does everything else pretty well. I like this pick a lot. I think this is fantastic for Tampa. Not the direction I thought they'd go, but it's a direction I'm very happy they went. So I'm going to give them an A here. Again, not quite an A+, because this wasn't a steal or anything. We'll talk about one of those when we hit the 5th round. But I did like the pick quite a bit. And then we get to the 2nd round. And they selected the man, the myth, the legend, Cody Mock out of North Dakota State University, the offensive lineman, going to be playing guard in the NFL, played tackle in college. I actually graded him out as a guard because I figured that's where he projected a little bit better, much like Peter Skoronski, who we'll talk about in our final draft grade episode. Make sure to check that out when it drops. But he's somebody that, like I said, I graded as a guard, so he's interior offensive lineman 7 for me. I had a round 2, round 3 grade on him, so maybe a tick higher than I would have taken him, but still pretty close. And this is a really good fit for them because they're a team that wants to lean more into zone blocking because he's a fast guard that's light on his feet. He's smooth, has good footwork, natural balance. He's got a wide frame with low body fat, which means no fat, all muscle. He's cooking. He's effective in space. He's an elite lateral mover. He played tight end in college a little bit, so he's got that tight end movement, tight end speed for a guard, which is great. He's got powerful hands, mirrors pretty well. It's just because he's more of a skinny guy. Well, not skinny, but by guard standards, he's a little skinny. And played tight end, he doesn't have elite functional strength. He kind of lacks functional strength. He drops his head a good bit, which I also don't love, obviously, because he's a guard, an offensive lineman. You don't want to do that. His arms are pretty short. He plays a little tall, and there are going to be instances where he gets overpowered, but thankfully playing a guard, that's going to be much less prevalent. He's just going to be asked to do a lot of moving. So I like the pick. I'm going to give it a B-. Nothing too crazy, but definitely a solid offensive lineman. There were guys that maybe they could have taken over him, like John Michael Schmitz could have played guard for them while Ryan Jensen kind of finishes things up, and then he could have taken over there. And sure, that would have been a better pick, but I'm fine with this. Now, the next pick, Yaya Diaby, the edge rusher out of Louisville, I didn't like as much. As I mentioned, I watched 40 edge rushers in this year's class. He ranked 24th. So he was right about the middle. I had a 5th round grade on him, so decent bit higher than I would have taken him. I like the player. You know, I like Yaya. I think he can be a good player. He's got a fun name. Just don't like the pick. I don't like him going this early. He's got a high motor. He's got exceptional balance. He really knows how to move and utilize his body. Quick feet, quick first step, strong hands, strong core, long limbs. All that stuff is great for an edge rusher. The only issue is, or the big issue is, he is very much a one-trick pony. He has a bull rush that he's going to employ and try to cook you with, and if that doesn't work, he's going to try to spin around you. So he's got one move and one counter. That's cool for college at Louisville. Get to the NFL, you're going to get eaten alive. So I have my issues there. He's also heavy-footed, doesn't have the greatest range. He's really not a good run defender. He plays pretty high against the run, which I hate an edge that can't defend the run. But I do think Yaya has ability to kind of develop there, so we'll have to see what happens. His football IQ can be a little questionable, and I know that's crazy to say for a guy that just got drafted in the NFL, but there are times where he just doesn't look like he knows what's going on. And his lower body as a whole is kind of stiff. So, again, I like Yaya. I'm excited for him in the NFL. I really don't like how high he went. So I'm going to give this a C+. But the next pick, they made up for that for getting, drum roll, the only A+ that the NFC South, will be getting. That is linebacker Servakia Dennis out of Pitt. Dennis was LB4 for me. Had a 3rd round grade on him. Getting him here in the 5th round is tremendous value. You want to talk about a player I like? I love Servakia Dennis. He's a great leader. He has, incredible energy. Absolutely incredible energy. He's just somebody that's going to step out on the field, get the boys ready to go, and they're going to fight for him. He's the type of guy they're going to fight for. He's got a high football IQ. He reads plays at a very high level. His play recognition is tremendous. He's a great tackler. Fantastic overall run defender. His ability to diagnose the run is elite. He's a pretty good blitzer. He had 18 sacks in college. He's a really solid tackle radius. He doesn't have crazy long arms or anything, but he can get the job done. And as a whole, he has good functional strength. So as a run defender, fantastic. In coverage, could use some help. He's a little underdeveloped in coverage. He was primarily asked to rush the passer and play the run in college. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work as a coverage player, but I do think there's a lot of stuff to work with there. Like I said, he's super smart. In zone coverage, he's already a little hit or miss. There's something to build off there. But because he lacks speed, man coverage probably isn't the move with him. We'll have to see what the plan is there. But overall, I love the player. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to be great for the Buccaneers, if I'm going to be honest. And I think he's going to be everything they wanted Devin White to be and more. So I really like the pick. I'm going to give this an A+, as I already said. And I think they knocked it out of the park here. Next pick, too. Tight end Payne Durham out of Purdue. I really like. I will say, personal biases have me worried. But looking at, we'll get into that. So looking at Durham, he was tight end 10 for me. Had a 4th to a 5th round grade on him, so about where I would have taken him. And the big thing about him is he's a fantastic fucking run blocker. Really, really good at run blocking. His technique, fantastic. His strength, really good. His ability to lead block and block in space, really good too. In fact, This is a guy with a little fullback potential, if you ask me. I know from a lot of people that would probably sound like an insult. I promise you that's the highest praise I can give a tight end. And the reason I say this kind of impedes my personal bias is because I'm a big fan of Kieft, who was playing a little bit of fullback for them last year as their tight end 3, and I'm worried that Durham might steal his job. So we'll have to see what happens. He's a guy that idolized Mike Allstott, if that gives you anything. Went to Purdue, played tight end, blocked his ass off there. I mean, come on. He's one of my favorite players in this class. Other than that, though, he's tough. He's got a good size for a tight end. Very reliable hands, only had 4 drops and 130 career targets. He has high football IQ, really good after the catch, good at contested catches. His lower half is explosive, but outside of that, he's not the most athletic guy in the world. Not super fluid, not super flexible, not the best route runner. Somebody that's like a career tight end too, plays a little bit of fullback, maybe a little bit of H-back, that type of guy. Love the pick in the 5th round. I know they have a metric dick ton of tight ends on the roster. Don't care. Gonna give this an A-, and we're gonna move on because I fucking love Payne Durham, and I think this is a great pick. And we got 3 6th-round picks. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know one of these guys that well. I watched him a little bit after the draft, and that is Josh Hayes out of Kansas State. From what I determined, what I was able to pull together, he's kind of like a nickel safety hybrid type guy, very much a developmental pick. He's pretty athletic, probably going to play a good bit of special teams right away in his career. I don't like that he's not a good tackler. In fact, his technique as a tackler is pretty bad. Missed a lot of tackles in college, which is not ideal. And he's not the biggest guy in the world, but 6th round, it's whatever. I'm going to give him a C+, because like I don't like the guy that much as a player, but 6th round, it's whatever, right? And then we jump to their other 6th round pick. Another guy that I didn't watch before the draft, but I did watch a good bit of after the draft. That is wide receiver Trey Palmer out of Nebraska. If I'm going to be honest, watching him after the draft probably would have been like a 5th round grade for me. So getting him in the 6th round is pretty good value here. He's very, very raw. That's the hang up here. That being said, this guy's fast. He's so fast that he makes fast people look not fast, right? He's probably the fastest wide receiver in this class. In fact, he might have been. I don't have his testing numbers in front of me, but it wouldn't have shocked me. He can high point passes pretty effectively. And he's got upside as a return man, which is pretty cool, right? 6th round, all that stuff's great. However, he's one of those guys who's a deep threat that kind of forgot how to catch. He dropped 13.8% of his career targets. Not great. Kind of drifts into his routes instead of running crisp routes. Also not great. When it comes to getting upfield on like gadgety plays, kind of indecisive. Also not great. And he wasn't the most productive guy in college. Granted, he went to Nebraska, but still, you know, I think he's okay. 6th round, you're taking a flyer on a guy with insane athletic upside. Pretty cool. Gonna give it a B+. I like the pick a decent bit in that regard. And finally, a pick that I really like. That is edge rusher Jose Ramirez out of Eastern Michigan University. This pick for Tampa Bay especially feels very fitting. Because I feel like, you know, kind of my insight, my little tinfoil hat conspiracy, is the Buccaneers were watching Jose Ramirez. And one of the interns came in, was like, hey, why is Shaq Barrett wearing a different uniform? And then everyone kind of looked at each other and they were like, that's not Shaq Barrett, that's Jose Ramirez. And then one of the guys in the back of the room was like, why don't we draft him? Because Shaq Barrett's getting kind of old. They're like, okay. And that's why Jose Ramirez is a Buccaneer. Again, that's a tinfoil hat conspiracy. But there's a lot of similarities between Ramirez and Shaq Barrett. First of all, Jose Ramirez was actually drafted higher than Shaq Barrett because Shaq Barrett wasn't drafted. He was a UDFA to the Broncos. So it's not the most unrealistic thing in the world to say that a 6th round pick is similar to a UDFA, right? This is a guy that sets a really strong edge. I love watching him set an edge. He's very productive, actually led the nation in sacks. He's bendy. He can win with speed. He's got a pretty solid tool belt. He's got good pursuit, good burst, pretty slippery, Kind of hard to get a hold of this little guy. Shouldn't say a little guy. I'm pretty sure he is a lot bigger than I am. But pretty hard to get a hold of him. He just needs a little bit of work in run defense in terms of like gap discipline and diagnosing the run. But, you know, you can work on that. You got a lot of guys to learn from in that regard. His functional strength, not great. Could use a little bit of work there. His anchor, also kind of iffy. And obviously going to Eastern Michigan, he played against a lower level of competition, but so have a lot of guys, right? It's one of those things. You got to bring it up. You got to be wary of it. We'll see what it does. But I'm going to give the pick an A. I really like it. I think this is a fantastic fit for Tampa. So as a whole, I'm fucking with this draft class. Pardon my French. I am rocking with it. So we're going to give it an A-. Not quite an A, but definitely an A-. I like what they're cooking here. I'm excited to see what some of these guys are going to do. Dennis, Durham, Ramirez, and Cansey all really intrigue me. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do for Tampa. Prayers up to Kalijah Cansey. Obviously got hurt. It's looking like he's going to be back within the first half of the season, which is great. Really excited to see what he's going to do with the remainder of his rookie season. But yeah, really like this draft class as a whole. I think Tampa did pretty damn good. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of my draft grade series. We got one more to go. AFC South coming maybe later this week. Probably early next week if not. But either way, I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to let me know down in the comments below what you thought of my grades. Was I too harsh, too nice, completely off base, anything like that? Please let me know. I love talking with all of you in the comments and reading your comments and seeing what you have to say. But yeah, make sure to drop a like down below if you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe. We've got tons and tons of content coming your way this month specifically because I'm a moron and took too long to do my team preview series. So now I got to cram like 20 teams into the month of August, but you know what? Fuck it. We ball, right? Yeah, and we're going to have tons of fun during the regular season. Going to be posting some weekly football content. Maybe delving into Madden a little bit. If you're into that, let me know. If you're not into that, maybe we'll move that over to a second channel. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Either way, it's going to be a very fun rest of the summer and a very fun football season. So yeah, to everyone out there watching, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.